In today's video, I'd like to show you the most effective pull-up regressions I've used with all of my newbie clients. So even if you're not able to complete one single pull-up now, or if all you can do at the moment is a questionable and ugly repetition at best, this video is for you. Yo, what's the crack? I'm glad you made it. These exercises in isolation are great and could deliver positive results. But the most effective way to fast-track your progress is through a well-thought-out training program that focuses on general upper body strength first and then gradually ramps up towards the angle-specific pulling strength required for pull-ups. Today I'm going to go over these regressions individually, but if you'd like to see how I would include these in a progressive plan, I would encourage you to check out this video. And lastly, let me just say that none of this will ever matter if A, you are an inconsistent and flaky person who can't commit to a plan over a long period of time and skips sessions on a regular basis, B, you are mentally weak and quit because, quote-unquote, it's hard, man, and C, you're very overweight and then you need to prioritize losing some pounds first. The reason why I decided to make a video on pull-up regressions now is because I'll be uploading many videos on calisthenics in the next few months, and I don't want my subscribers to feel like they can't follow along. By picking the right regression for your level of strength and adjusting the overall weekly volume of work, you could create a beginner version of the workouts I've shared in the past on this channel and the ones I'll be sharing soon. Let's take a look at what I consider to be the top 5 pull-up regressions. I believe there is great value in performing exercises where there is very little movement involved at the very beginning of your journey. The old expression, just hanging there, might be what many folks might need after all. Hanging from a bar passively will improve your grip strength. But once you can support your body weight for over 30 seconds or so, you could step it up a notch by adding a dynamic component where you transition from a passive to an active hang will strengthen the very bottom part of a pull-up, where the scapula complex does most of the work. The goal here is to bring your ears away from your shoulders without flexing your elbows. By depressing and retracting your upper back multiple times in a controlled way, you would be strengthening all the muscles around your scapula. Although it might seem like an easy movement to do, noobs will be challenged for as long as they keep their arms completely straight. Do not flex your elbows here, otherwise you'll be robbing your scapular complex from foundational gains. Speaking of foundation, let's talk about the next regression. Many people might disagree with me on this, and that's absolutely fine, but this is what I've personally observed over many years coaching and training individuals. The first, and perhaps the most effective step towards your first pull-up is the inverted row. For over 95+% of newbies, I wouldn't recommend skipping this movement to then move on to harder regressions of the pull-up, even though that's an option. The reason why is that specificity is not a major concern for complete beginners getting into resistance training. Noobs are weak overall, and anything they do for their upper body will have a positive carryover to other upper body movements. If you want to build a foundation of strength from the ground up, you'll be in a much better position to take on the challenge of your first pull-up if you spend most of your time working on push-ups and inverted rows. The inverted row is slowly but gradually earning its own right to be considered a compound staple independent from the pull-up, at least in the calisthenics world. If you're interested in learning more about the value of bodyweight rows, I made 2 videos that could help you understand why this movement deserves a category of its own. But in today's video, I'm only going to look at them as a useful stepping stone towards the almighty pull-up. The issue I see with other pull-up regressions is that some of them will be very high intensity for sedentary folks. Noobs are almost testing their maxes instead of spending time working with sub-maximal intensities and thus building up their strength more safely and with better form. And that's where rows come into play. The easily adjustable setup offers the trainee the chance of getting into a body angle where the lifter could perform multiple reps in a set. And the last point I'd like to make about all these pull-up regressions in general, and the inverted row in particular, is that this list of regressions doesn't work like the mechanics of a video game where you have a player who completes one level and then moves on to a higher one to never look back. It doesn't work like that, okay? You'll be much better off progressing inverted rows throughout the entire process while you simultaneously work on harder regressions. The latter could provide the intensity and the specificity for the pull-up, while the former, aka inverted rows, provides the necessary volume for both pulling practice as well as a much louder hypertrophic signal for the primary muscle movers to grow. Negative repetitions could also be a helpful tool for the trainee. In fact, there is no piece of equipment giving assistance here. Your feet would no longer be on the ground, so that the only contact point would be your hands grabbing the bar, just like real pull-ups. Plus, the displacement of the load, aka your body weight, mimics 50% of what happens during a repetition. So overall, I find many compelling reasons to deploy this regression when I train beginner lifters. However, me listing off all the positives in this movement certainly builds up to a big but. Negatives only expose the trainee to the lowering phase of the pull-up, thus skipping the ascending part, aka the concentric phase. In weight training lingo, eccentric work would be the equivalent of taking load off a barbell to make the movement less intense. This weight reduction occurs as a result of skipping the concentric phase. You don't need to create a force greater than your own body weight in order to move up. Instead, you're only required to produce a force that is less than your body weight to control the descent, meaning the lowering phase has a lower force production requirement, thus making this regression more accessible for beginners. But you would still have to work your tail off in every single set. Even if you don't go up like in a real pull-up, this doesn't mean it'll be an easy ride, because it won't. I like to see my clients focus on descending with a consistent tempo in each repetition. You don't need to do crazy amounts of negative pull-ups at the start because you'll spend a lot of time in the phase where muscles lengthen, and this could cause significant soreness. As your body gets more accustomed to eccentric pull-ups and you gain confidence in your ability to control the descent, then make sure to progress by adding more reps or isometric pauses somewhere along the way. Additionally, I would highly recommend to simultaneously train other movements that do have a concentric phase, like the inverted row or the feet-assisted pull-up, which I feature in the next section of this video. Pull-ups performed with your feet in contact with the ground are also a fantastic alternative. In fact, I use this regression in a similar fashion as I employ the bodyweight row. As I said before, inverted rows are a beginner-friendly tool to accumulate high-quality work in a pulling capacity. The feet-assisted pull-up serves the exact same purpose, but I consider this movement to be an even closer relative to the actual pull-up because of the line of action. From a muscle perspective, rows are going to strengthen all the primary movers of the pull-up. However, from a strength-specific standpoint, inverted rows are skewed towards getting you stronger in a horizontal-ish line. For you to get closer to the angle of a pull-up, you like to perform a pulling movement that has your arms in an overhead position at the start. For this reason, this feet on the ground regression does a better job at strengthening an anatomical function that inverted rows happen to be deficient on: shoulder adduction. Here, your feet are your tool to adjust intensity. The further away your feet are to the straight line below your hands, the harder it is. How you place your feet on the ground will also play a role. The more surface of your feet are in contact with the floor, the more assistance you'll get from your leg muscles. But if you reduce the surface of contact by only having your heels touch the floor, the more difficult the exercise becomes. The last pull-up regression has trainees use a band so that they can get a fair amount of assistance at the bottom part of the movement. This could be a double-edged sword if all you do is pull-ups with resistance bands. What I mean by that is that there is a fair degree of disparity between the strength curve of a real pull-up and a band-assisted one. Pull-ups are the most difficult at the very top of the range of motion. So, given that a band reaches its maximum stretch at the bottom, and thus this is where you get the most assistance at, the band essentially helps you the most where you're the strongest. This is not ideal, of course. In a perfect world, you would get the most help wherever you're the weakest. However, this should not be a big deal as long as you're simultaneously using some of the other regressions I previously discussed. So, despite the fact that this isn't a perfect regression and it certainly has some drawbacks, especially when it comes to getting you maximally strong at the bottom half of the movement, I still believe that this could be a very useful tool for the athlete. As you go up in the concentric phase, the assistance of the bands drops significantly, which means that the carryover you get at the top is great. You're almost doing the real thing. Most importantly, this is the only regression that has your feet elevated while you move up and down in a vertical line. Besides, when you get to the point where you can perform this exercise for multiple repetitions, this could be a real confidence booster for many, simply because people get motivated by the fact that they feel that they are getting closer to their actual goal. And quite honestly, band pull-ups feel very similar to real pull-ups, provided you use a light band that gives you roughly 10 to 30 pounds of assistance. If a newbie can't even complete one single repetition with any of the two lightest bands there are in the market right now, I don't even bother. This person needs to keep working on easier regressions. Finally, bands could be somewhat ineffective if they are not used properly. If the trainee does not control the negative because he or she wants to capitalize on the bounce at the bottom, strength adaptations could be almost non-existent in the first half. That's why I personally avoid thick bands. And the last thing I like to point out is that I usually introduce beginners to pull-ups through the neutral grip variation, for no particular reason other than the fact that it forces your shoulders into an angle that is closer to the scapular plane. Here, you are in a stronger position to produce pulling force when your arms are slightly in front of you, as opposed to a pull-up with a pronated grip. Here, your shoulders are forced into a more horizontally abducted position, thus making you weaker. Furthermore, the neutral grip does not prioritize any particular muscle group when it comes to elbow flexion. It doesn't discriminate certain elbow flexors in favor of others like a supinated or a pronated grip would. Both the shoulder angle and the grip makes the neutral grip pull-up a perfect candidate for noobs to gain real-world exposure to a vertical pulling compound movement. I really hope you found value in today's video. If you did, check out these two other videos popping up on the screen right now. I think you're gonna like them. Please give me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to click on the bell to get notified every time a new video goes live. Stay fit, stay strong, help me raise an army of Super Saiyans all around the world. Peace.